The year is 1912. A housewife in rural America faces her day. She must haul gallons of water from a well, tend a wood-fired stove that requires constant feeding, scrub laundry on a washboard until her knuckles are raw, knead bread from scratch, and mend clothes by hand under the faint glow of an oil lamp. Her life is a relentless cycle of hard physical labor. Now, picture your own life. You tap a screen and dinner arrives at your door. You speak to a small cylinder in your living room and music fills the air. You cross continents in a matter of hours, a journey that once took months of perilous travel. We are living in a golden age of convenience, a world our ancestors could only have dreamed of. We have vanquished friction, eliminated effort, and automated our existence. So why, in this paradise of ease, are we more anxious, more distracted, and more disconnected than ever before? This is the story of an idea that promised us freedom, but may have secretly built us a cage. An idea so seductive, so deeply embedded in our modern world, that we rarely stop to question its true cost. This is the unseen history of convenience, and how it might be secretly ruining your life. For the vast majority of human existence, life was anything but convenient. Survival was a full-time job, a constant, direct engagement with the physical world. If you wanted fire, you had to make it. If you wanted food, you had to hunt, gather, or grow it. Every single calorie consumed had to be earned through strenuous effort. This world was harsh, dangerous, and often short, but it was also a world of profound connection to the natural world, to the changing seasons, to the materials you used, and to the community you depended on for survival. Every task, from shaping a flint arrowhead to weaving a basket, required skill, patience, and a deep, embodied knowledge passed down through generations. Your hands were not just tools, they were instruments of survival, creation, and identity. The first whispers of what we might call convenience began not as a pursuit of ease, but as a flight from catastrophe. The invention of agriculture was not necessarily easier than hunting and gathering, but it was more predictable. It offered a buffer against the terrifying uncertainty of the hunt. The creation of pottery allowed for the storage of grain, a convenience that staved off winter starvation. These are not luxuries, they were life-saving innovations. They were about creating stability, not eliminating effort. For centuries, this remained the pattern. Innovations were slow, incremental, and aimed at solving fundamental problems. The Roman aqueducts were an astonishing feat of engineering, a massive convenience that brought fresh water to cities. But they were built with the sweat and toil of legions, designed to support a vast civilization, not to make an individual's life effortless. The printing press made knowledge accessible, a profound convenience for the human mind, but reading and learning remained demanding activities. Convenience was a byproduct of solving big problems, not a goal in itself. The true birth of convenience as a deliberate ideal, as a product to be sold, and as a virtue to be pursued is a much more recent phenomenon. It required a perfect storm of social and technological change, a storm that began to gather in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The Industrial Revolution had created factories capable of mass production. Urbanization had moved people into cities, creating dense markets for new goods. And for the first time, electricity began to snake its way into homes. Imagine the world just before this shift. The home was a place of constant production. It was a workshop, a kitchen, a laundry. The housewife of 1912 was a skilled manager of a complex domestic economy. Her labor, though unpaid and often invisible, was essential. Then into this world came the sales pitch. It was a promise whispered in magazine ads and demonstrated by door-to-door salesmen. The promise of liberation through technology. The electric vacuum cleaner promised to end the back-breaking labor of beating rugs. The automatic washing machine promised freedom from the washboard. The refrigerator promised an end to the daily trips to the market and the risk of food spoilage. Each invention was presented as a miracle, a tool to free the modern woman from domestic drudgery, giving her more time for leisure, for family, for self-improvement. It was an irresistible dream. And in many ways, it was true. These conveniences dramatically reduced the sheer physical toil required to run a household. But here lies the first subtle twist in our story. The time that was saved wasn't necessarily converted into leisure. Instead, the standards of what constituted a clean or well-run home began to rise exponentially. Now that you could have spotlessly clean floors and freshly laundered clothes every day, you were expected to. The nature of the work shifted from strenuous, intermittent tasks to a constant, demanding state of maintenance and management. The physical burden was lessened, but the mental load, the pressure to achieve a new, higher standard of domestic perfection, arguably increased. Convenience didn't eliminate work, it transformed it. This was just the beginning. The mid-20th century saw the explosion of consumer convenience. The rise of the automobile in the suburb created a new way of life, but the car, that ultimate symbol of freedom and convenience, came with hidden costs. It necessitated the creation of vast networks of roads, it fragmented communities, and it turned the simple act of going to the store into a mandatory journey. Then came the food industry. The TV dinner, introduced in the 1950s, was a marvel of modern convenience, a complete meal ready in minutes. It promised to free families from the tyranny of the kitchen. This was followed by fast food, instant noodles, microwavable everything. We traded the skill of cooking for the convenience of speed. We outsourced the most fundamental human act, the preparation of our own nourishment, to distant factories and corporations. And what was the unseen cost of this convenience? We began to lose our connection to food itself. We lost the knowledge of where it comes from, how it's grown, what's in season. We lost the sensory experience of chopping vegetables, the aroma of baking bread, and the communal ritual of preparing a meal together. We gained time, but we sacrificed skill, knowledge, and a deep elemental connection to what sustains us. Our diets became dominated by processed ingredients, sugar, and salt, contributing to a host of modern health crises. The convenience of the drive-thru came with a long-term bill for our well-being. The late 20th century brought the digital revolution, and the pace of convenience accelerated into a blur. The personal computer, the internet, the smartphone, each promised a world of effortless connection and information at our fingertips. And they delivered. We can now talk to someone on the other side of the world instantly. We can access the sum of human knowledge from a device that fits in our pocket. But consider the trade-offs. The convenience of email and instant messaging has created a culture of perpetual availability, where the workday never truly ends. The boundary between our professional and personal lives has dissolved. The convenience of social media, which promised to connect us, has for many led to feelings of anxiety, comparison, and profound loneliness. We scroll through curated, idealized versions of other people's lives, feeling increasingly inadequate about our own. We have 1,000 friends, but may not know our next-door neighbor's name. We have traded the messy, demanding, but ultimately rewarding work of real-world community for the frictionless, shallow connections of the digital realm. This brings us to the modern apex of convenience culture, the world of the algorithm and the one-click purchase. Today, convenience is not just a feature, it is the dominant business model of our time. Streaming services learn our tastes and serve up an endless buffet of content, eliminating the friction of having to choose or risk watching something we might not like. E-commerce platforms remember our purchases and suggest what we should buy next. Navigation apps find the fastest route, removing the need to read a map or even learn the layout of our own city. Each of these services is designed to minimize effort, to reduce what Silicon Valley calls friction. But what is friction really? Friction is the space where learning happens. Friction is the moment of uncertainty where we are forced to think, to make a choice, to solve a problem. Getting lost and having to ask for directions is friction. Reading a book review and deciding if a story is for you is friction. Having a debate with a friend about what movie to watch is friction. These are not bugs in the human experience. They are features. They are the very processes that build resilience, foster critical thinking, and create shared memories. By systematically eliminating this friction, we are outsourcing the small, everyday acts of decision-making and problem-solving that build our cognitive muscles. We are becoming passive consumers of algorithmically curated realities. The convenience of having our tastes predicted and our paths chosen for us comes at the cost of serendipity, of discovery, of the joy of stumbling upon something unexpected. It erodes our ability to tolerate ambiguity and to navigate complexity on our own. Let's look at the physical toll. The convenience of a sedentary screen-based life means we move less than any generation in human history. Our bodies, honed by millennia of walking, running, and physical labor, are now largely dormant. The convenience of having everything delivered means we don't even need to walk to the store. We have engineered movement out of our lives, and in doing so, we have engineered away a fundamental source of physical and mental well-being.
But perhaps the most profound, most insidious cost of our obsession with convenience is the erosion of skill and meaning. Think back to that 1912 housewife. Her life was hard, but it was also filled with tangible skills. She knew how to bake, to sew, to preserve food, to manage a household. Her identity was tied to her competence. Or think of a craftsman from a century ago. A carpenter, a blacksmith, a tailor. Their work required years of apprenticeship, a deep understanding of their materials, and a pride in their creation. Their hands were intelligent. What skills are we mastering in a world of one-click convenience? We are becoming expert consumers, masterful scrollers, efficient task switchers. But the deep, embodied skills that come from sustained, effortful engagement with the real world are atrophying. The act of repairing a broken object, of learning to play a musical instrument, of cultivating a garden. These are activities that are often inconvenient. They require patience, persistence, and the acceptance of failure. They are difficult. But it is precisely in overcoming that difficulty that we find deep satisfaction, a sense of agency, and a durable sense of self-worth. When we strip all effort from a task, we often strip it of its meaning. A meal lovingly prepared over hours, shared with family, holds a different meaning than a pre-packaged one heated in a microwave. A piece of furniture painstakingly assembled from raw wood carries a different weight than when clicked and delivered. Convenience promises to give us back our time, but what do we do with that time? Often, we fill it with more convenient, low-effort consumption, caught in a cycle of passive entertainment that leaves us feeling empty and restless. This is not a call to abandon technology and return to the washboard and the wood-fired stove. That would be absurd. The conveniences we have built have saved lives, cured diseases, and granted us possibilities our ancestors couldn't imagine. The problem is not convenience itself, but our unquestioning worship of it. It's the belief that easier is always better, that a frictionless life is the ideal life. We have reached a point of diminishing returns. The first wave of convenience liberated us from genuine back-breaking drudgery. The current wave of convenience, however, often saves us from experiences that, while challenging, are precisely what make us human. It saves us from the inconvenience of being bored, which is where creativity is often born. It saves us from the inconvenience of difficult conversations, which is how relationships deepen. It saves us from the inconvenience of physical effort, which is how our bodies and minds stay strong. So what is the path forward? It begins with a conscious choice. It's about deliberately reintroducing positive, meaningful friction back into our lives. It's choosing to walk or bike instead of drive. It's choosing to cook a meal from scratch instead of ordering in. It's choosing to learn a new, difficult skill, a language, an instrument, a craft. It's choosing to read a challenging book instead of scrolling through a feed. It's choosing to have a face-to-face conversation instead of sending a text. These are not grand revolutionary acts. They're small, intentional rebellions against the cult of effortless. Each one is a vote for engagement over passivity, for skill over consumption, for connection over isolation. The hidden history of convenience is the story of a dream that in its fulfillment revealed a paradox. We pursued a world without effort, only to find that effort is often what gives life its texture, its meaning, and its joy. We built a world to cater to our every whim, only to discover that our well-being depends on challenging those whims.
The unseen war is not against technology or progress. It is against our own seductive desire for a life so easy, it ceases to be a life at all. The great challenge of our age is not to invent more convenience, but to cultivate the wisdom to know when to choose the harder, more inconvenient, and ultimately, more human path. Today, we questioned convenience. Next time, who knows what foundational idea will unravel? To be part of that discovery, give this video a like and be sure to subscribe to Ages Unseen. The most interesting stories are still waiting to be told.